physicist who said to me, Frankie, in this ecological worldview, there are no parks, there are only participants. And that's what we all then are. So, if my theme today is the power of the big ideas that we're putting out there to each other, to the world, to increase people who are letting go of that fear of assuming power themselves and challenging non-transparent concentration of power, if that's what we're about, then how do we work on what are the big messages that we are rallying people about? And so the rest of my talk is organized around 5 of them, and I hope that I challenge you in this, I'll speak of first one, what I call a disempowering message or a thought trap in eco-mind, and that is, I often hear people say, we've hit the limits of a finite planet, and we've got to power down and learn to live within these limits. We've hit the limits of a finite Earth. And so, for example, in the Green Economics textbook by Herman Daly and Professors Daly and Joshua Farley, they write that fossil fuels freed us from the fixed flow of energy from the sun. And so I'm concerned that people hearing this framing, this idea, would feel very deflated and disempowered. The idea that it would increase the fear of lack. And we know now from psychologists telling us that when people feel insecure, they become more materialistic and more concerned about their own mortality and more defensive. So I want to remind us, and I guess I don't have to remind this group, but I love to say it, the late wonderful leader in Germany, Hermann Scheer, reminded us that the Earth supplies us 15,000 times the daily dose of energy that we're currently using in fossil fuel. So we've got to drop this notion that we have to rely on the fixed energy of the sun. Actually, for all practical purposes, it is not renewable. It is just renewing. It is there for us, and its waste is perhaps the greatest waste of all. And we also hear people, when we hear this idea that fossil fuels freed us in some way from the fixed energy, that we forget that fossil fuels have entrapped us, have enslaved us. The last time I looked, Exxon, for example, was making $1,400 a second. And the concentration of power that represents, you know how that plays out in terms of the capacities to influence our privately held governments, so that fossil fuel is where the subsidies go. It's something like tenfold what is there available for renewables. So I think that it could be that instead of the notion that we hit the limits, that actually what people will experience looking back on this era is that we found our freedom from the entrapment that fossil fuels represent. And that, so when I know the transition movement, which I love, talks about energy